Ladies and gentlemen, please take your seats.
Where?
You can take yours.
Good morning. Welcome to St. Louis. I'd like to welcome all of those joining us on YouTube. I convene the meeting of the Committee of the Whole. This is a semi-official meeting required by the standing rules. No actions or votes will be taken. Rather, it's an opportunity to consider and discuss the issues and recommendations that will come before the board during the official meeting on Friday. My assistant, my EA, will now call the official roll.
All right. National Commodore Gus Formato.
Here.
Vice National Commodore Mary Kirkwood.
Here.
Immediate Past National Commodore Alex Maliski.
Here.
Chief Director Auxiliary Captain Troy Glendye. Here. Deputy National Commodore Atlantic Area East and Mission Support Alan Fred.
Here.
Deputy National Commodore Atlantic Area West and Operations Patrick Ferry.
Here.
Deputy National Commodore Pacific Area and Recreational Boating Safety Tiny Singler.
Here.
Deputy National Commodore Information Technology and Planning Linda Merriman.
Here.
District Commodore 1st Northern John Hume.
Here.
District Commodore 1st Southern Michael West.
Here.
District Commodore 5th Northern Kurt Sarek.
Here.
District Commodore 5th Southern John Krogman.
Here.
District Commodore 7th District John Holmes.
Here.
District Commodore 8 Coastal Region Peter Scamato.
Here.
District Commodore 8 8 Eastern Chris Whitaker.
Here.
District Commodore 8 Western Rivers Brock Stevens.
Here.
District Commodore 9 Central Patricia Mitrowski. District Commodore 9 Eastern Richard Evans.
Here.
District Commodore 9 Western Sonny Thatch.
Here.
District 11 Northern Curtis Hahn.
Here.
District Commodore 11 Southern Michael Borzoth.
Here.
District Commodore 13th District Danny Kinley.
Here.
District Commodore 14th District Michael Keurig. District Commodore 17th District Marion Parrish. President National Association of Commodores Robert Lauer.
Here. Thank you. During this session, there will be comments from the Chief Director of the Auxiliary, as well as from the Vice National Commodore. There will also be reports from the Deputy National Commodores, the President of the National Association of Commodores, and the President of the Coast Guard Auxiliary Association. We will now hear the reports of the National Executive Committee.
All right. Captain, you are up first, sir.
All right, well, good morning, everyone. And as Commodore Formato said, welcome to St. Louis here. I will say, as now it's been about almost 2 years since I've taken the seat of the role as the Chief Director, and I can truly say that every day I'm truly humbled by your dedication and professionalism. So thank you for all that you do. For today's reports, I'm just going to go ahead and start off with 4 things within BSX that we have updates on. First thing is AUX Data 2. For those, and many of you know that AUX Data 2 has now been up and running for almost 3 years. There are continuous updates to the program AUX Data 2, and there's 2 different ways, as many of you know, to provide those type of updates. The first one is going through your local flotilla IS. So try to take there at the lowest level possible, provide any updates or recommendations, and those will be included on their priority list. And of course, the second way to do that is through a help ticket there. Regarding AUX Data 2, one thing we are working on is, and it's a very high priority within BSX, is integrating AUX Data 2 to the auxiliary ID card printers. We do have a success story with, as far as the printers goes. This past fall, the authority to operate was approved, And so we are just working on funding so that hopefully each DIROC's office we can purchase those printers for them. So we are still working on the funding, but we're getting to the goal line on that. Second topic is all the updated AUX guidance that has just come out in the past year since NACON. So just to report, we have 2 policy letters, 1 SOP, 2 PQSs, 3 handbooks, and we have 1 instruction that is currently going through concurrent clearance right now. We're also looking at that instruction, which is the Auxiliary Operations Manual. We're looking to take that and hopefully put into either a handbook, I believe it's a handbook or policy letter type of a thing where we don't have to go through all the steps to get it updated. And we're looking to do that through a lot of the manuals. For example, the different handbooks that there's 3 handbooks that just were instructions at one point, so that way we can change and update them as needed. And just to go through all these changes to policy are all on the Chief Director's website there. Just to run through a couple of them here, just to make sure that you're aware of that. We have the policy letter for the new Master Carterman. We have the Flotilla Procedures Process Guide, which actually just was released the end of last week. We have the Auxiliary Boat Crew Qualification Handbook and the Auxiliary Training Handbook, as well as the Auxiliary Paddlecraft Program. And then moving on to the SOP, the Auxiliary Ceremonial Color Guard programs, SOP was just released as well. And then the 2 other qualifications was the EMS PQS and the Marine Safety Administrative Management. That was a tremendous work by Master Chief and the entire staff to get those policy letters. I think I was talking to someone just now about, hey, how did you do all that? And I was like, well, I've got a great staff and we have a lot of great input from the auxiliary, and then it goes through our staff here to get them out. So we're trudging through that list of priorities that I think I talked at the ASOC class earlier this week about. So we're getting at it, and then hopefully I'll have some more updates on those policy letters and so forth when we get to NACON. All right, moving on. So our training officer position, for many of you knows that has been vacant, and I want to thank my entire staff. I know Wine Tober, Lieutenant Booth, who stepped up, doing a lot of extra work in that training position that's been vacant for about 2 to 3 years. And also, more importantly, to the auxiliary, we have an EA staff, Ms. Jenny Stack and Commodore Don Zinner, who did tremendous work in that EA role. And as many of you know, we were deeply saddened by the loss of Commodore Zinner about a month or 2 ago. He was a tremendous asset to the auxiliary and also to my staff, so I can't thank him enough for that. Okay, last update there is I know FSMS, I know the Commandant mentioned that yesterday, and I could see everyone, she knew exactly what that acronym was because everyone rolled their eyes and put their head down there. So I think we're finally getting to the light at the end of the tunnel. Last I was told is all fiscal year 22 patrol orders. That was a big thing, getting patrol orders paid. All of fiscal year 22 has been paid out, and for fiscal year 23, Master Chief did a tremendous job with matching up POETs, which are kind of our counting lines, directly with AUX Data 2. So fingers crossed, fiscal year 23 should be going off a lot smoother than the last year. There's, of course, going to be some hiccups along the way. Please bear with us. We will work on that. Lastly, and I totally forgot to introduce Mr. David Goff there for the training position, as I realized. So that was a vacant billet, and if you can just stand up so everyone, he's been here this entire week. He just checked into Coast Guard headquarters back on March 13th. If looking at his resume, tremendous resume. He graduated from Brown. He's been working a lot with the Peace Corps, so he's been here in there. So please go introduce yourself to that. So just welcome Mr. Dave Goff to the team there. All right, moving on to as far as the future, so those are updates within BSX. I want to talk a little bit about the future, the auxiliary. I know it's a lot of questions that I get asked about. And I kind of want to piggyback on what the Commandant said yesterday regarding the Auxiliary Integration Award and the gap analysis, and just the sky's the limit there as far as how we can integrate auxiliary into the active duty workforce. But just let everyone know that I know I've been also asked about RBS. So as you all know, the #1 mission for the Coast Guard Auxiliary is the recreational boating safety. However, there are other needs of missions that the Coast Guard needs, and so with the Auxiliary Integration Award, the gap analysis, we're going to really I'm stressing to a lot of the active duty folks to continue think AUX. I know that was a big push, I want to say 3 or 4 years ago from what I heard. Take that same mentality of when a mission pops up, first off, not only what the Coast Guard can do to meet that mission, but also how the auxiliary can help meet that mission as well. Want to go through a couple of those other missions we talked about. Recruiting, that's been a big topic here, not only for Coast Guard, but for the Coast Guard Auxiliary. So I know the Coast Guard, we need your help for the Coast Guard recruiting, but also for auxiliary recruiting in that. That program, as many of you know, is the STAR program, which is Scout, Talent, and Refer. Make sure on that too, when you get a active duty person to boot camp, not only do you get an LOC, but you actually get paid as an auxiliary, $1,000 per person in that. So please, if folks don't know that, please pass the word, because we really need to get the word out. I've always said, hey, the Coast Guard's the best kept secret out there. We need to stop letting that be a secret and letting all that to help with our recruiting. You heard the stats yesterday from the Commandant. So a couple other things that we're doing. So CG Cyber, that was talked about. I would have never thought like 5-10 years ago that we'd be having auxiliaries integrated in the CG Cyber. So that instruction was signed back in November. And so that is, I mean, there's, like I said, the sky is the limit on there. Contracting, that's another thing. I know Commodore's talked, Commodore, was it NACO and VNACO both had a meeting with, who was it that was? Keith, who's from contracting to help have auxiliaries help with closing out contracts. Once again, another mission I would have never thought 5 or 10 years ago that would occur. Also want to have, I know Captain Newbar had wanted me to express my thanks. He's an office right next to and Coast Guard IND, which is right next to my office at headquarters. But within a matter of 2 weeks, he needed to get auxiliaries to help with the Freedom of Information Act. He has a whole backlog of them. With that, we posted up on the Help Wanted website, and within a matter of 2 weeks, we had to turn away auxiliaries from their help on that. So once again, tremendous job by everyone stepping up to the plate and utilizing the skills that you currently have. So with that, I see I'm getting the red thing. I'm glad we just do not have the dart gun here this year, so at least I maybe have a little bit of leeway with that. So with that, I want to thank you for all that you do for the nation, but more importantly for our Coast Guard, because we could not be where we currently are without your assistance there. Thank you.
All right. Vice National Commodore Mary Kirkwood.
All right. Good morning, everybody. It's great to see everybody. It's great to be here in person again. Zoom does a lot, but this is much better. I have a couple things I want to talk about. First off, there's a couple of areas that report directly to me. Chief Counsel Commodore Cream was not able to attend, but I want to thank Bruce Kelton and Gene Sukudowski, who are here this week to help us with any legal issues, so thank you. A couple of things coming out of legal or being worked on by legal. The first one I know for our national staff is key, and that's the intellectual property form, also known as the copyright form. That is being revised. It will only be required for people in the directorates of IT and PA. Unless there are other groups that are working on something that might be necessary. There will be no more notary required. It will be attestation only, and that's going to start May 1st. So you'll be seeing that soon. The form, Commodore Cream has created it, and I think it's a big win for us in terms of just getting rid of one more obstacle for our national staff. You've heard about the contract. Coast Guard asked us to help with closing out 300,000 contracts. Obviously, over the course of several years, there have been contracts and for some reason just were never closed. And so we have now, we have 3 buyers 6 accountants, 1 paralegal, and 34 attorneys who've stepped forward to help us with that. So we'll be giving those names forward. Those have all been vetted by those areas that they're experts in. And so hopefully we can help Coast Guard. Again, another area we never thought we'd be involved in. For diversity and inclusion with Commodore Schultz, the NACO 3-star award application has been updated, so please make sure you're looking at the correct application. Now tracking diversity and inclusion FEMA-related courses in AUX Data 2, and those are Diversity Awareness course, the Civil Rights and FEMA Disaster Assistance course, People with Disabilities and Other Access and Functional Needs and Disaster Operations course, and Concepts of Religious Literacy for Emergency Management. So if you've got members that are involved in those areas, civil rights or emergency management, these are some good courses for them to take. They've created these little 5-minute segments called Diversity Moments, and you could share those with your flotilla meetings if you want to pass that down to your flotilla leaders. And then they're continuing their town halls, their diversity and inclusion town halls that were so popular last year are continued again this year. We have new ANACO this year, new area administrative services. That's with Commodore Mahalchik. Good enough? Huh? There's 2 new directorates in there. So there's an investigations teams directorate, and they recently assisted with, you've probably heard about this, identifying maritime fraud cases, and they were very instrumental in helping close some of those maritime fraud. The documents team really has their work cut out for them. They've identified software that's going to house all of our documents. They're working on some of the rules around there. Of course, one of the things they've talked about is what are they going to call each document? What's the nomenclature so that we can find it when we want it, right? So that's what the things that they're working on right now. So they have a lot of work there. They've also developed a standardized form for capturing minutes from the flotilla level all the way up. And so more of this will be rolled out in the next couple of months. David Barber, our finance person, could not be here this week. They, as you know, did the financial controls standard operating procedure. It's posted on the Chief DIROCs. There have been a lot of comments about that, a lot of concerns, and just know they're collecting that. They're going to make some revisions, and that will be revised and coming out soon. Over the past year, district finance offices completed a draft audit committee guide for use across the auxiliary, so that was key. If you're going to be doing audits as we need to, what does that entail and how do you do it? So they've got a how-to guide now. New this year, for the first time, we implemented a new bottom-up financial budgeting process through which each directorate was given the opportunity to provide input on their budgets for the year, and allowed us to eliminate initiatives that were no longer in use, that were no longer important. David has initiated the rollout of financial reporting dashboards, enhancing the capturing and accountability for expenditures. So our directorates are seeing that, and our DNACOs. And the first phase of rollout should be completed by June, so by the end of the second quarter, so that's coming. We're going to be augmenting national team to include travel claims, a processing group to support AUX Auxiliary Association claims. The hope is to try and get those turned around and out back to the member in 2 weeks or less. So that's, I think, a big improvement as well. And that's expected to be fully operational by NACON in August. And then we know there's a problem right now with member dues. The districts have not been asked for dues yet. Please make sure you're collecting them at the district level from the flotillas. One of the challenges we've had is last year at NACON, we approved the recommendation of pulling all of our members out of AUX Association, and that has caused a little bit of a riff of how we make that work, and so that's being worked on right now. So at least collect the dues at your district level, because we will be billing you for them quite soon. And the last area I want to talk about is safety, and that's Commodore Schaefer. Unfortunately, he was not able to be here as well this week. Did I skip him? Where did I have him? Anyway, he has put together a couple of different teams. There's administrative safety, a safety overall team. There's a district district's representative team, and that just met last week. And there's another one with subject matter experts, and that met, I think, in January. So he's got the ball rolling. And thanks to many people who've been involved in safety and have expertise in safety who are on that team and helping us. We have some milestones in the national plan, strategic plan, specifically around safety, and so working on those for sure, trying to get those. And so far we've already completed 3. There's 3 yet to be started, and then the rest they're still working on as a team. I think one thing I do want to note, and Lieutenant Commander Rice will speak to this when he speaks later in the week, but the issue, hey, Lieutenant Commander, the issue, one of the issues we have is we have just under 20,000 members, and we have continued to be working, doing meetings and public education classes and out on the water and everything. We have not reported one mishap since NACON. Clearly somebody has tripped over a cord at a PE event or something. We need to be better at letting everybody know what our mishaps are, reporting mishaps so we can learn from them. Sometimes, something happens, it's a near miss 7 times, and then it actually is an incident. We want to find it at that first near miss and stop it there. Okay, so please make sure you feed that back down to your flotillas and your people going out on patrols and doing public affairs, public education, etc. That's the end of my report. Thank you.
All right, up next we have DNACO Atlantic and Mission Support, Alan Fred.
Good morning. I'm pleased to share with you this morning some highlights of the work done by the 11,800 plus members of Lance East. What I will do is highlight by district some of these activities. I will start with 1 North with Commodore John Hume. 1 North's membership team has reconfigured the district's membership scheme to focus on professional development as well as qualification currency maintenance. And their primary vehicle for doing this will be their virtual D-Train, which they are doing in collaboration with 1 South. They will follow that with Sector S trains focusing on those activities that require direct participation. The surface operations team and the OTO are working with the QEs and coxswains to ensure smooth transition to the new operations handbook. Operations leadership is working to promote positive aspects of the program as a strategy to manage positive and constructive change. 1 North is engaged with the active duty District Waterways Management Chief to promote and prioritize private aids to navigation verification. 1 South, Commodore West. Earlier this month, 1 South held a regional-based training program, and they will be conducting a 2nd regional-based training program in June. They are currently, as I mentioned earlier, collaborating with 1 North with their virtual D-Train. They are also planning a district awards luncheon to recognize the members' accomplishments for 2022. This is a top priority for Commodore and his staff. They have to date processed and shipped out approximately 1,200 awards to members, breaking a 3-year backlog in awards. 1 South will also be collaborating with 5 North with a variety of public affairs events and training opportunities. Members in 1 South have participated in a number of activities, including the New York City Boat Show, St. Patrick's Day Parade, and have a number of events coming up later this year in which they will be participating. Fleet Week, obviously National Safe Boating Week, and National Wear Your Life Jacket to Work Day. In 5 North, Commodore Kurt Sarek. 5 North has implemented a help wanted ads and jobs board on their website and has sent out notices of general information to all members, recruiting of new members, training, road shows, working with the active duty to share their story of skills. 5 North has also created a Bravo Zulu program where they have teams on a standby for quick reaction to fill needs of different active duty units and are able to provide responses within 12 to 48 hours. Culinary assistance has been one of the more active initiatives with their Bravo Zero program. They have also committed to continuing their role as RBS advocates in the community, and in all of their RBS events, they have included recruitment efforts for the active duty. In 5 South, Commodore Krogman, 5 South, excuse me, held their first NTRAIN since the fall of 2020. The attendance was very good. Rear Admiral Gilreath, the 5th District Commander, was in attendance, as were the district commanders from all 3 sectors. They followed that with a V-Train, virtual training with over 300 members participating. Excuse me. Also within 5th Southern, there have been 2 new flotillas stood up. One is a Sea Scout-oriented flotilla. The majority of those members are either Sea Scouts or parents of Sea Scouts. There is also a second flotilla being stood up that will have cyber as its focus. 5th Southern is also doing a great deal of work with the AUP program. Elizabeth City Air Station and the Elizabeth City, North Carolina Flotilla are collaborating to stand up an AUP program at Elizabeth City State University. Elizabeth City State University is an HBCU institution. Excuse me. The AUP and 5th Southern is also very much supporting the recruitment efforts of the Coast Guard. At Virginia Military Institute in May, there will be 4 VMI cadets who will be receiving direct commissions as Coast Guard ensigns. There is a 5th VMI graduate from a couple of years ago who will also be receiving a direct commission. There's also an AUP member from Virginia Tech who will be receiving a direct commission. So it's been the AUP is alive and well in 5th Southern. District 7, Commodore John Holmes. I think we all are aware of the terrible weather, the hurricane storms, what have you, in District 7 last year. District 7 has been, done a fantastic job. The tenacity of their members has been demonstrated as they rebuild the auxiliary and become more active. One of the interesting things I find in District 7 is their support of the space launch. They have so far supported 11 space launch missions. They have, in doing this, they have made contact with over 236 vessels in the security zones, a total of in excess of 800 people on board those vessels. So a very, very robust initiative there with the space launch there at Cape Canaveral. District 7 also recently held an NTRAIN in Miami. They had over 70 members attending, and they were joined by members from active duty who work closely with the folks there in that area. They have also conducted 2 SAR exercises, joint effort between the auxiliary and active duty, working on simulated SAR situations. District 7 has also contributed. Bobby, he used to be a good friend of mine. A significant number of folks who have been involved in Southern Border and Operation Vigilant Sentry have come from District 7. They also, District 7, of course, includes Puerto Rico, and they are beginning to get the AUX Air folks back operational. I also want to just give a quick shout out, and I'm not going to steal his thunder. You'll hear more tomorrow from Todd Monis, the ANACO for FORCECOM. FORCECOM, of course, includes AGHT directorates. Those directorates have been doing an awful lot of good work, and I want to commend them for that. And that concludes my report.
And now we have DNACO Atlantic West and Operations, Patrick Ferry.
Good morning. Proud to stand up here today as the DNACO Atlantic West in operations, and I want to say that I've waited 16 years to stand up in front of a group of auxiliaries and say what I'm about to say. I heard this a long time ago and have never heard the opportunity, but I want to say that ops is tops and west is best. So there we go. So what I want to do is I want to give you maybe a thumbnail sketch from about 35,000 feet about what's been going on in operations response and in the Atlantic West. So let's start with operations, which is led by Associate National Commodore Rick Saunders and his deputy Anthony Marzano. Includes surface, aviation, international affairs, emergency management, telecommunications, prevention, marine safety. So a lot going on. Charged with 3 initiatives in NACO's strategic plan. Happy to say that there's 24 milestones. We've met 3 of those, 10 are in progress, and 11 are to be stood up yet. And I'm sure that Commodore and his staff will provide more details come OPCOM on Friday. Prevention, marine safety is headed by Kim Coleman or Deputy Michael Mitchell. If you've looked on their website, the Sea Partners program has been revised, has stood up. I urge you to go there and start using that good material. Also, they are very busy in looking at some PQSs and revising some of the qualification standards in some of the areas of marine safety, and those should be published here shortly. And more importantly, they're working diligently to find ways to help us as the sunsetting of paper charts continue, looking for ways that we can get into the electronic realm with the charting challenges we're going to face here very shortly on a 100% basis. And aviation, surface, telecommunications headed up by Roy Savacco and his deputy Larry Fletcher. You all know they've completed the handbook for operations, for surface operations. The PQS has been revised, and the new currency maintenance program, which is really not a new currency maintenance program. Any of you that are long in the tooth in this organization will remember we did this 15 years ago, and I think it's a good idea that we start doing it again. Aviation's dealing with the challenges of an engine recall, Continental aircraft engines being recalled, grounded probably a full third of our aviation fleet, but they're tracking that, and as the assets are coming back online, they're letting us know, and we're keeping NACO and VNACO up to date on that. They're also encouraging all districts to take a look at the Push to Talk program, which is a radio communications program that's available to all of us. It's proved very helpful in many of the areas around the country during storm events. International Affairs, Sven Dobler and his 2 deputies, Drew Wilkins and James Sullivan, very busy helping active duty with interpreters down in the Caribbean with Operation Vigilant Sentry, working with our foreign partners and trying to attract new foreign partners to strengthen the bond between Coast Guard auxiliaries around the world. And they're also looking at a way to maybe hold meetings throughout the year with those foreign partners. And in the Q Department, Bill Hanlon and Dan Jackwish, very busy with the gap analysis. I want to thank all of you out there that have helped support that to get that done. Phase 1's now over, and Bill will be reporting on that later today. And Phase 2 will start here shortly. They've also been very busy with the Southwest border deployment that the Commandant has spoke about yesterday. I'll kind of go over the 6 regions that encompass Atlantic West. It's the 8th and the 9th District. A lot of territory, a lot of land, home to almost 5,000 auxiliarists, which right now are on a pace to contribute over 400,000 hours in support of the active duty, the boating public, and each other. And it's still cold in a lot of areas. So I'm hoping that goes to about 500,000 Commodores by the end of the year. All the regions are very actively participating in spring boat shows, hoping to promote recruiting and boating safety. They're also very active in coordinated efforts in terms of risk management, refresher training, core training, the workshops, getting people up to date so nobody runs the risk of going REYRs. Supporting active duty sectors and stations is continuing. Aviation continues with the MOM patrols and the migrant interdiction patrols and the environmental patrols. So we're good there. We're very active. We're glad to see that. It seems we've come out of the COVID funk, and that's a good thing. I want to reach out to Commodore Patty Matrowski and Brock Stevens, and thank you for your cooperation, consideration. Since we rescheduled this conference, that's butting up to their March NTRAINs, and they've had to show some great flexibility there in accommodating both ways. So as far as the 6 regions are concerned, 9th Eastern, Rich Evans and Steve Botsford, they've stood up some instructor teams to go about the district to make sure that risk management refresher is completed here in the first quarter, so nobody's struggling at the end of the year to get that done. They're constantly meeting with the active duty to find new ways to support one another, especially in the area of uninspected passenger vessels and the dock walking mission to get the word out there to the boating public. The 9th Central, Commodore Matrowski and her Chief of Staff, Commodore Mark Villanueva, has the highest completion rate of OX-TCT in the whole country, or core training in the whole country. And that's not happened by accident. That's happened through proactive management and motivation of membership, not only for Patty, but Kathy Slagle, I think, started that, and maybe Sue Thurlow before her. So, it's a good idea. It can be done if the communication is there. They're retooling their PDCA to provide leadership training to the members on a consistent basis, and they're doubling down on the use of electronic media to enhance recruiting and spreading our boating safety message, and also emphasizing that recruiting is brought up at every VE and PA event. 9th Western, Commodore Sonny Thatch and Tim Dari, working actively with the active duty to work with each other more to increase proficiency in terms of the area of training. Working with D9 Legal to stand up a team of auxiliarists to help active duty members with legal issues, wills, trusts, powers of attorney, leases, and things of that nature. So that's kind of outside the box, and I like to see that. And they've also been asked to staff a seasonal small boat station up in the Chicago area, as the Nines are having some difficulty keeping that staffed as they're committing their people to support Operation Vigilant Sentry. The 8th Eastern, Commodore Chris Whitaker and Steve Bono, the Chief of Staff, reporting that their mission hours are now at pre-COVID levels. That's a good sign. The memberships remain constant throughout all this. That's another good sign, so it is happening, so good job there. Report that they're very thankful for the support they're getting from the marine safety units around the area in training auxiliaries to support that mission. It increases, and of course it lightens the load of our active duty partners, and fulfilling that mission. And they plan to expand the region's capabilities in virtual, to help with training and recruiting. The 8th Coastal, Commodore Pete Scamardo, Chief of Staff George Tate are happy to report that last weekend, the first all-Spanish America's boating course was conducted in the New Orleans area, and hoping that outreach attracts more people to our organization as well as spreads the boating safety message. They held in-person flotilla commander academies, which were well attended. They traveled about their district and got to meet the people and got the word out. They're talking about traditional boat crew academies, but they're also talking about VE academies and instructor academies and PV academies to kind of bolster our ranks there. And they're always in discussion with the active duty leadership in the 8th District to find ways to get more people involved in incident command missions where they can get sign-offs and get letters of designation. Last but not least, our host division, the 8th Western Rivers, Commodore Brock Stevens and his Chief of Staff, Bob Arisman, are going throughout the district, presenting workshops in risk management refresher. Get that done in Q1. That's the goal. Hope they get close to 100% in that. They're also doing something proactive and pretty interesting. They are surveying the members to see if anybody's thinking about leaving the auxiliary this year in the event of identifying why and maybe reducing that number. So good idea, I like that. And lastly, they're investigating the possibility of taking some flotillas that are struggling. Maybe they've reached the minimum number of members, lack the organizational mass to continue on effectively, and consolidate them to make one good, strong flotilla as opposed to maybe losing one or two. So that kind of wraps it up. Right under the gun. It's an exciting time to be in the Coast Guard Auxiliary. Thanks for all you do. Thanks for your attention, and be safe.
All right, now we'll hear from DNACO Pacific Area Recreational Boating Safety, Tiny Singler.
I've got my big paper here, okay? Good morning, man. It's fantastic to see everybody here. You know, I'm blessed with being on the best coast. Oh, I'm sorry. But anyway, it's a heck of an area. We cover California, Utah, Nevada, Washington, Montana, Oregon, Idaho, American Samoa, Hawaii, Guam, and all the way to the Singapore. So it's just a wee bitty way to go, all right? So anyway, what I would really like to get into is that I have RBS too, which I dearly love. And matter of fact, when Gus asked me to do it, I said, oh man, on the other side, I'm smiling like crazy, okay? So we have D11 North, which is headed up by Commodore Curtis Hahn, and they had a successful training event in January, which was for their elected officers, which was part of the Past Division Commanders Association. They have 21 new members to date. That's what I love hearing, okay? Their D-train unfortunately had to be canceled. There seemed to have been some snowfall on the pass there, about 14 foot. You couldn't see the top of the semis, okay? So that kind of made a thing. But they have been running the Request for Forces, or RFF, now for 2 to 3 years, and it's still a continuing program working with the active duty, and they're constantly being asked for new requests and augmentation, and that's both D11 North and South, but there's a lot of requests going on for culinary assistants, interpreters, and they keep a skills bank there where they have them all set up and ready to go. They also had a recent Everbridge event on March 21st from a storm that came through there. And you know, you don't think of it sometimes, but that's where our Everbridge and other means that we have to communicate with our members become so important. They had 11 members that had damages to their property. They had 2 members that actually had to be evacuated and 1 member that required assistance. So that was a great job covering that. They have 1 member that just completed their Cutterman's badge, but that makes the 21st for their area. That's a heck of an accomplishment. Then we go to DLM South, which is headed up by Commodore Michael Bozarth, and I call him Boz, so I'm sorry, I may not pronounce the last name correct, but doing a great job. He's had some town hall meetings with his people to find out what's going on and what needs to be done and how to get some things corrected. And then he's completed 9 of those, and they're once again working on their request for forces. It's manual right now, but he is working on setting it up where it'll be automatic, picking up on the skills banks and everything to automatically be able to fill them. And they successfully completed 2 EPIRB hunts, which was ordered by the D11 South AOR to try to find out which was successful. I don't know how many of you knew Commodore Charlie Geiger. Unfortunately, he passed away during the early portion of Michael was just taken over and didn't have the luxury of having an immediate pass, but they did have the memorial for him. Their current actions, they've got a Future Leaders Academy that's happening at their D-Train. It's by invitation only. They're starting up a finance committee and ways and means committee, and for their D11 South preparation for the D-Train itself. Planned actions they've got coming up, their D-Trainer course, and then they're going to have some PA events, and which they've got the Bart Hall Fishing Expo, Armed Forces Day, Fleet Week Los Angeles, and multiple other PA events planned. Then we get to District 13, which is Montana and Idaho and Oregon and Washington. They have made some hefty goals. They're trying to get back up to doing 5,000 vessel exams and getting 7,000 program visits and upping their clergy, which is already fairly large, but they want to grow it more. Getting more public education classes, getting more students into those public education classes, and of course upping the number of patrols, which means having 100% participation in the TCT refreshers and also with the ITRM. And then they've completed 12 sportsman and boat shows, major events already for the year. And their summer events, of course, you have the Rose Festival, you have Seafair, and you have the Columbia Cup races. Okay, sorry about that. They've also, with the Paddlecraft Initiative, they've passed out or sent out over 40,000 if found stickers across the nation that comes all the way to the D13 website. And they've given out 5,000 Paddlecraft kits to go to the marine dealers that hopefully they're given to every time a customer comes in there and buys a new kayak. And then we go to, I love it, and I was at their D-Train, and I totally enjoyed it. I also was at District 14's D-Train, and which covers Hawaii, Guam, Samoa, and Singapore, which is headed up by Commodore Keurig, and I've had a ball. First time in my lifetime, I sat there and watched a hula dancer. Now, you know, somebody had to do it, okay? And so I apologize, okay? But I love the training. The training was fantastic there. They also are establishing a district newsletter, which hopefully everybody's doing, but, you know, it's great that they're having that. They are going to have an AMLOC class that's in September. I cannot believe it cannot be filled. I can't believe nobody would want to go to Hawaii to attend AMLOC, okay? They're trying to set up a communications network across the islands there. So far, it is only in Maui, in one area, but they are going to have it across there. Hopefully this year they'll get that done. And I saw some of the best training that happened at NTRAIN when it came to talking about the Ox Scout program and also talking about the OxPad program ashore. And that was something that they came up getting their people interested in. So that was fantastic. And then we go to District 17. I also was able to go there. So I went from one extreme of heat to the next extreme of snow being filed up to the top of the high lines, okay? So I loved it. But they had some division meetings. They've come up with some missions where the weather got in there a little bit, but they still completed. Boy, you get me close. Anyway, they have they're planning on a bunch of educational classes that are going to go out throughout the year, from all the way from BS&S to Boat America and Subtly in Command and everything. So they are making a lot of headway there. And then we get to RBS. I have to tell you, what a crew. We have Commodore Lauer and his assistant NACO, Chris Wilson, and the whole group of directorates. I love it. We've completed so far the public education workshop, the VE workshop, and also the program visitor workshop. We've had the OxPad handbook approved. We're working on some train the trainers out there and with our instructors. We're also working on an OxPad type of training that's not only going to train people that want to become possible OxPad operators in the future, but for the ashore side and what's the safety items in it. These will be going on throughout the districts over the next year. I am excited about these programs because we have something that we have to do as a whole group, and that is reaching the paddlecraft communities. And the more we do on that, the more lives we're going to save, and that's what we're about. We do two things in this, and in my eyes, as the auxiliaries, is that we take care of our recreational boating public and we train our people to augment the Coast Guard. Thank you very much.
All right, up next, DNACO Information Technology and Planning, Linda Merriman.
Good morning, everyone. It's great to be here. It's great to see everybody. And I'm delighted to have the opportunity to share with you some of the things that are happening in information technology and planning's 4 directorates. So I'm going to start on the information technology side. Under Assistant National Commodore Susan Davies, the Computer Software and Systems Directorate is led by Amanda Constant, and her deputies, Carlos Arenas, who leads software development, operations, and program management, and Joe Espino, who leads internal and external cybersecurity initiatives. Their mission is the design, development, production, and maintenance of underlying technologies, equipment, and solutions essential to advance the U.S. Coast Guard auxiliary duties and missions. The Directorate was recently reorganized to realign cybersecurity in the AUX Cyber Augmentation Program under a new Deputy Director for Cybersecurity. The existing Cybersecurity Division was moved under the new deputy, and in December, 2 new divisions for AUX Cyber Program Support and Cybersecurity Prevention Operations were added. These teams are actively engaged with Coast Guard on initiatives and emerging issues at the area, district, and sector levels, including conducting cyber workshops for Coast Guard civilians and having 4 auxiliaries named as members to Area Maritime Transportation Security Committee working groups. As the captain mentioned earlier, in 4th quarter, the Coast Guard Cyber Command signed and issued the Auxiliary Cybersecurity Augmentation Program Cyber Instruction. It is the official Auxiliary Cyber Program SOP and chartering document. This followed the inclusion of the auxiliary in the November revision of the Cyberspace Operations Manual Commandant Instruction. The manual's Appendix D establishes auxiliary cyber resources as an important element of the Coast Guard cyber workforce. The project to automatically transfer member training results from the Moodle online classroom to Oxdata 2 now includes auxiliary core training completions, which removes the need for self-attestation and the corresponding manual database updates. Important enhancements were made to auxiliary server security, with the existing firewall upgraded and brute force protection enabled to block suspicious IP addresses from being used to access our servers. And the other half of IT is the User Support and Services Directorate, led by Director Jen Austin and Deputy Bill Ballard. Their mission is to deliver support for the technology needs of the U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary. The new and revised auxiliary mission activity codes announced in AUX 3422 were successfully implemented in Oxdata 2, along with the corresponding revisions to the 7030 mission activity form. Critical services provided to members, the Coast Guard, and the public by the IT group are the help desks. The Oxdata 2 Tier 1 support team processed 910 service requests in Q4, which was a 17% decrease from the over 1,400 done in Q3. Improved password and login instructions and a redesign of the Forgot Your Password procedure contributed to the decrease. Patrol order service requests decreased to 68 in Q4, in part due to the lower seasonal patrol activity and in part due to the redesign of the patrol order request to better inform members on how to resolve data entry issues. The Legacy Help Desk processed 561 tickets during the same period, primarily for login issues associated with the new Cognito authentication system. And speaking of the help desk, the legacy help desk software was over 10 years old and had not been supported by the vendor for several years, which created a business continuity and a cybersecurity risk. After evaluating alternative commercial solutions, a new national help desk service was acquired. Implementation of it is in progress, and with the expectation that it will go live well before NACON. Okay. A new Communication Services Officer virtual course completed testing and is now available in the Auxiliary Online Classroom. Initial enrollment is by invitation, beginning with the District Communication Services Officers, and we encourage all of them to take advantage of that invitation. An in-person AUX 10 Information Services C-School was conducted here earlier this week. A virtual AUX 10 class began in February, with the second virtual course scheduled to begin in May. To meet the demand for more AUX 10 training, a plan is in place to identify and train additional instructors, with the goal to expand the number of courses offered, beginning with at least 2 additional virtual courses in 2024. Being a successful IS officer involves much more than entering data into Oxdata 2. Recognizing that the current AUX 10 training is primarily Oxdata 2 focused, the Directorate is undertaking a project to create a basic IS officer training course. It will be focused on accurate mission understanding and activity reporting, which will give the IS officers the knowledge they need to best support their members. On the performance and student program side, under Assistant National Commodore Peter Jensen, the Performance Management Directorate is led by Director Kevin Redden and Deputy Harry Parsons. Their mission is to measure, analyze, and report out performance and resource data to help elected and appointed leaders at all echelons make informed decisions, both tactical and strategic. The Strategic Plan Tracking Team began tracking organization-wide progress on the new 2022 to 2028 National Strategic Plan, which was published on 1 November, and Commodore Jensen will give an update on where that stands during OPCOM on Friday. In Q4, it was determined that the survey services from our previous commercial vendor would no longer meet the auxiliary service survey needs. The M Directorate's Surveys branch evaluated several alternatives, selecting Zoho Survey as the best solution. With this change, the quarterly new member and exit surveys were able to resume in January. Reports on those will be coming out shortly. All regularly scheduled reports from the Directorate were produced and posted on their webpage. They're accessible after login into the member zone. The Student Programs Directorate is led by Director Jean McNamara and Deputy Jacob Thayer. Their mission is to work with stakeholders across the Coast Guard, both active duty and auxiliary, to promote the Coast Guard as a career or volunteer opportunity to America's future leaders. And you've heard from several of my colleagues about the Auxiliary University program, thank you, and the Sea Scouting program, also thank you. The AUP program has 188 students in 53 institutions, with 20 more students in the process of coming on board. In Q4, Virginia Military Institute, Norwich University, Mass Maritime Academy, and the United States Merchant Marine Academy entered the program as brick and mortar units. AUP Unit Development is working with Texas A&M and Franciscan University with the expectation that these two institutions will be the next to come into the program. In addition to the spectacular results we had with VMI students entering the Coast Guard's Direct Commission program, AUP students comprised 1/3 of the college graduates in the Coast Guard's Q4 Officer Candidate School class. On the Sea Scout side, the Auxiliary Sea Scout program grew to 555 members and 27 auxiliary-sponsored ships. One new flotilla-sponsored Sea Scout ship was chartered in New Bern, North Carolina, and additional ships are in the process of being organized in 9 districts. Thank you. In October, the Youth Programs Division introduced a revised Aux Scout SOP to the districts. A corresponding workshop was developed and presented in November, and it is also downloadable on demand from the Auxiliary Boating Safety Partnership's webpage. You heard from Commodore Fred that earlier this month, the Auxiliary's first Sea Scout organized flotilla was chartered in 5th Southern District. It is comprised of experienced auxiliarists as well as 20 new auxiliarists who are either Sea Scout leaders or adult Sea Scouts. Their focus will be on the Aux Scout mission and best practices to transform the lives and future careers of its young members. There were 7 Safety at Sea events held around the country in 2022. This is the highest number ever and reflects the hard work and effective cooperation between Coast Guard active duty and the auxiliary. And finally, more than 400 auxiliary members have completed the Boy Scouts of America's Youth Protection Program, and most district and division Aux Scout staff officers have already completed the 2022 Aux Scout Staff Officer Workshop. So those are just a few highlights of what's happening in information technology and planning. Thanks for your attention. If you have any comments or questions, get a hold of me after the meeting.
We will now hear from the President of the National Association of Commodores, Robert Lauer.
Good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure for me this morning to stand up here and represent the National Association of Commodores. For all of you that may not know, we are a group of past DCOs, ANACOs, and senior auxiliary leadership. And what our goal is to provide support in any place that it's deemed necessary. So what are we doing to try to make that happen? I recently sent out a survey to all of our the 2 past generations of auxiliary leaders to try to gauge their interest, to have them tell me what they would like to do if they could re-engage. And all of them that I've talked to have expressed a desire to re-engage. So there's an enormous resource out there that would be able to assist district projects, national projects, whatever it is that we decide that we need help with. I think that we can provide that. We as NAC can provide that those services and support to you. And I'd like to thank my awesome staff. And there was a lot of things that we had to do to try to get organized. And without Pete Jensen and Clark Godshall, Bob Schaefer, John Tyson, Carolyn Belmore, Nancy Rudiger, and Mike Morris, it would have been impossible for me to turn that over. And with their help, we've been able now to take a look at the current membership and try to reach out to all of those folks to find out what their needs are, and also express our needs to them to see if they would like to reengage. And just a quick note about that, I did hear back from one of the Commodores, and he had been actually retired 7 years, and he got back to me and he said, you know, I would really like to help. And so that is kind of the attitude that's out there. They want to re-engage, and I think that we should take the opportunity to make that possible. So we'll be working. The first survey went out. The second survey is going to go out to the entire membership, and that will give us some more data on what that is. We'll assemble a skills profile, and then we'll try to decide what connection we use to integrate and go forward. It's, in my mind anyway, all good. The other thing that we're working on, and a lot of you folks maybe don't know it, is we have a beautiful monument that's getting ready to be placed at Cape May, New Jersey, and that is a monument that will have the names of all of the past Commodores on it. It's a beautiful thing. It's three large stones to start with. All the past Commodores will be inscribed on it. And we're not too far away from deploying that. I'd like to get that done this year. One of the folks at Cape May have made it a lot easier on me, where they have said to me, you provide us the documentation, and we'll run with the ball to make sure that that thing can be installed on those grounds. And it will be sitting next, right next to another auxiliary monument. It makes sense that the thing is there, and we have plenty of support to do that. So naturally, what's the issue? Well, the issue is I need a little more money in order to do that. So I'm sorry here to stand up and grub for dollars, but that's exactly what I'm doing. I have some tremendous coins, and I have some other things. I look forward to a few donations to get us over the hump. And I've noticed that there are a lot of new Commodores out here that maybe haven't joined yet, so my group will be going around behind you to make sure that we help you loosen you up a little bit. But I'd like to get that thing installed this year. We're not too far away. It's been a long time coming, and we need your help. So if you don't mind, I'll be coming around and we'll talk about that, and we'll try to make that happen. And with that, sir, thank you very much. Thanks for your time, and have a great day.
Thank you, Commodores.
All right, now I'd like to introduce Lieutenant Commander John Rice from the Safety Forces Management Division for his presentation.
Good morning. Everybody seems tired. 2 claps on 2. 1, 2. All right, you guys are not as good as my basketball team, but I'm just waiting for the presentation to be brought up. I got to connect it. You can do whatever you want.
You have to do handcuffs, John.
I'll keep going for the time. So, Commandant Safety Policy. Is this? Coast Guard Auxiliary falls under the Commandant Safety Policy. Doesn't matter if you're auxiliarist, active duty, reservist, but we got to report mishaps, and hopefully we can get this up so I can show you some of the products that we developed for the auxiliary that gets brought over to BSX and then hopefully pushed out to everyone. But a couple key things from the Commandant's current safety policy: it's on and off duty. Mishaps that occur every activity and mission. So if you're doing anything in support of the Coast Guard down on the border, or even en route to a mission or at a conference, that's a mishap if something happens to you. And as the leadership in this room, it is critical, and this is experience that we're working on even in our own afloat community, that it comes top down. And that's the way to get it to go bottom up at the same time. Safety management system has 4 pillars: policy, risk management, assurance, and promotion. I'm going to talk a lot about reporting. and in the coming slides. And he's playing, so I can't even see what I'm looking at right now.
Yeah, we're trying.
We did test this before, and oh, there we go.
Okay, let me. There you go.
You just want to hit that one right there? Nako, I promise you I will go through this quickly. All right, so I'll just highlight a couple of things here, but risk management goal is zero preventable mishaps. We all know there's human error in the system and mishaps are going to happen. And it's actually very cyclical. So they occur, when a mishap occurs, it's fresh in everybody's mind, people are alert, and then slowly that tapers off and people return to complacency and then mishap starts again. So the goal of mishap reporting is to identify when we start to lose that recognition and then plug in training. I'm not a fan of training everything. You train to make sure that you're targeting the right skill set and knowledge to prevent mishaps. So one of the things I'll highlight here is we're currently developing standardized safety training for inserted into every single course. That's all command cadre. That's going to be very tailored to them and what they can do to build a culture of safety within their environments. We're also looking at rebranding, rebuilding TCT. Those efforts have been ongoing for about a year, but the process is kind of slow and cumbersome. But at the end of the day, we'll have that shared vision. It was very interesting when we were doing the training needs analysis that everyone was teaching something different, whether it was outdated material, how to interact, when to report. And this is a way for us now to be on the same page, and it's supposed to be an annual training on LMS. The mishap response plan and TTP and template, that is now up to date. So hopefully the auxiliaries have seen that. It's available on Hillsville Service Center's webpage. And safety councils and meetings. I brought this up last time. This is a great opportunity, and I'm going to go, when I talk about building a culture, I'll refer to this. But hopefully you are now actively participating in the district or the sector safety council meetings, and even at the unit. This is critical for sharing information and distributing lessons learned. And identifying what risks or hazards are out there we're developing. We also have our advanced mishap analysis and reporting course. Maritime now has 3 sessions. It's moved from NTSB Training Center down to Mobile. So auxiliaries get 2 seats, 2 quotas at every course. Unfortunately, we didn't get any volunteers for the first 2. The goal is to get someone from every district so that they can support their own mishap analysis and doing the human factors and sharing lessons learned amongst everybody. The next convening is in September, and I know Bob Schaefer is working with our office to identify 2 candidates. But this is a way for you to actually look at your own mishaps and learn from them. So I briefed back in August about the support equipment product line. This was after a fatal accident, and it's pictured there on the right. And right now, it's moving forward pretty quickly. This month is the safety awareness campaign that we started last year. There's a whole lot of resources available online, but they're there the whole time, and a lot of training materials. We also entered our first assets into EAL, so now we're starting to track maintenance, total asset visibility, readiness. We've came up with and decided on what equipment we're going to use. Mobile cranes, forklifts, we actually think that's too much now for the Coast Guard. We don't need it. We can actually work with telehandlers and attachments to do the majority of our missions and do them safer. And that will also help with standardization, developing training and maintenance and everything else. So that's a big movement, and I just can't remember how many they're looking to do a bulk purchase for units. And then now we're building LMS training, PQS and OJT for crane and forklift operators and telehandlers. So a lot is happening right now with this program, and we're getting a lot of positive feedback from the fleet. The other one I want to mention is PPE centralized management. So back in June 2018, Eagle had another mishap from a temporary crew member that fell from the rigging. He hit the gunnel on the way down, broke his back, his leg in 3 places, and then went into the water at night. He did without a PFD, and he was able to tread water long enough until the boat, which if anybody's ever been on Eagle, it takes a long time to launch that boat, get the crew moving. I think he was in the water for at least 20 minutes before they were able to pull him out, bring him to Gitmo, medevac him. During the course of that mishap analysis, we discovered a whole bunch of stuff that was wrong on that unit and inconsistent with fall protection standards. And the PB you see on the right was not ANSI approved. In fact, you can see the strap, it's only supposed to be 18 inches, and it was like 28 inches, almost 30, where he couldn't relax, lean back into it and relax so that he could, so fatigue set in, and while they were up in the mast, and then eventually he just couldn't hang on anymore and let go, especially around when you're traversing the mast, where there's no connection points. So now we've actually developed some standardized procedures for Eagle, working with the tall ship community. But the big directed action for this was looking at a holistic approach for PPE. Everyone in that room, when we were doing the Commandant Safety Board, had a PPE story where PPE failed. And that led us to do a whole bunch of looking. And this started right before COVID. So we developed a project charter, and it basically fell onto me because everybody retired or left. And over the course of the time, you can see a lot of the stuff that we did, but I'll give you a couple of the highlights. We found 24 studies since 2008 on this very topic of whether or not we should do PPE centralized management. There's no training for the folks on the deck plate that do the maintenance. Everything's paper records. And when we did a review of all of our fatal mishaps, 70% of them for the afloat community had a PPE component. I initially did a pull out of e-misreps looking for failed, like PPE not worn properly, and I couldn't find any. Every unit, including for the fatal mishap, said PPE was worn properly. And then as the mishap analysis board got there, we found things. And there's another picture I'll show where the boat crew helmet of a recent fatal mishap was not in the impact layer. So now we're looking at doing so we briefed all of this to DCO, DCMS, the status, about 3 weeks ago. And without even briefing the solutions, they say we need to move towards centralized management. We also had an issue with dry suits. We found out a certain manufacturer, the dry suits, the seals weren't effective. And we didn't know where they were in the Coast Guard. And as I started visiting units and talking to them, one boatswain said he had 5 dry suits in his house, and he took his whole family whitewater rafting. And I responded, I was like, well, imagine if something happened to one of them. What would that CNN news article would look like? And so, and another Master Chief took me up to a locker where we have all this gear just stored away, just waiting for someone to use it. And now as the Coast Guard is changing, mixed genders, different size and shapes, a lot of that burden falls onto the unit to figure out how to fund and manage. And you're losing the life cycle of it. So all of a sudden you have a crew change out and you have to change out several of your firefighting ensembles to meet new body fits. That's like $5,000 on the unit, and they're not getting the funding for it. Actually, every member in the Coast Guard is fully funded for PPE, but it gets taxed at multiple layers along the way, and then it goes to something else. Some of the leading indicators we looked at were third-party inspections. 3 out of 5 discrepancies for every community was PPE related. And if you look at backlog requests, every area gets $8 million a year for PPE. So what is that saying about our safety culture if PPE is the thing that we're putting on backlog? So during the brief, DCO, DCMS immediately said we need to do centralized management of this. We've already proven economies of scale for certain equipment where we'll save $2.2 million right off the bat, but units will then be able to just call up. It will reduce the burn on the fleet. They'll be able to call up and then just be able to get whatever equipment they have. We're starting a pilot program. We're shaping up what that will look like with certain pieces of equipment. We're looking at dry suits, PPERBs, all different types of helmets, whether boat crew, firefighting, and we're going to develop those requirements and work with industry to be able to improve it. So that's the PPE product line. I'm happy to answer any questions, but I know I spoke to somebody in August about this. I will connect you with whoever to make sure that the auxiliary is part of this program, because everything should be standardized. All right, 5 minutes, I can finish here. So reportable mishaps. Anything bad happens is pretty much a reportable mishap. Big problem though, mishap classifications. This was recently updated, and I think the writing was on the wall. We actually were aware of this, but we were trying to improve the safety culture, so we made the cost thresholds the same for aviation as they are for boat. But when anything happens in aviation, it's always much more expensive than boat. But this is consistent with DOD, which is what we were trying to do. And if you look, a Class D mishap is now $25,000 to $60,000. I mean, you're basically destroying your boat. So to get to an A or B is basically a fatal mishap or total loss of an asset. Actually, C is probably total loss of an asset for auxiliaries, if not a D. And then we created the op hazard, which is the Class E. Well, those are not necessarily required op hazards, but we were hoping it would encourage more reporting, but we're seeing less reporting for both active duty and I would say the auxiliaries. As it was mentioned by VNACO, we only had one mishap reported up for this fiscal year so far, and we didn't really have any in the fourth quarter. So for reporting, there are immediate actions notifications. Hopefully you have those response cards from the sector or the district. You're going to want to let your OIA know, sector commander, district DUROX, and potentially his will service center. But again, the big thing here is not to place blame in it and really look at lessons learned. The mishap that was reported, it was by D5, was an awesome report. Has anybody seen that? Okay, this was a boat on mission, returning back to station at night, no moon, so no light, and they ran into an aid to navigation, charted aid to navigation at 17 knots. That's definitely high risk. This is happening in active duty. This is one of the big things. We're seeing active duty boats hitting fixed aids to navigation, charted, on radar, on plotter, all the time now, and we're trying to figure out why. Whether it's fixation. The track line actually went right over the aid. And on the way outbound, the lookout saw the aid close aboard and didn't say anything. On the way to return is when they actually hit it. They were slightly off track. Caused, I think, $16,000 in damage, no injuries, luckily. But a lot of lessons learned in there. It talked about laying a track line, being, scaling in onto your whatever chart plotter you have so that you see everything and lay an accurate chart line. It talked about safe speed. It talked about using the radar and correlating and also that TCT component. Hey, guys, we just came real close to this aid and correlating with the track line. If one person spoke up anywhere in that cheese, that sliced cheese analysis, mishap would have been averted. So that's a great one. I would take it back. That is in the mishap library, and we should be pushing that out to all of you, that you then push it down the deck plate, and it's non-attributional. It's just like, hey, bad things happen sometimes. It wasn't intentional. They accidentally put the track line down wrong. All right, I'm down 2 minutes. Paper forms, I know it's still very difficult electronically for everybody, and we don't have that app yet, but there are long forms that are available. You should carry those with you, fill it out, hand it off to whoever your OIA is to enter in the mishap reporting system. This is a couple of the products we designed for Coast Guard Auxiliary in the mishap library. You have two charts here. You have one that's for the current quarter, and then you have one for 5 years. And this will tell you the leading causes of mishaps. As you can see for this one, it's elisions. You only have one here, and on the other one you have elisions and groundings. Groundings is another big one. But using these tools, you can actually target your training. Why is that happening? Why are we focusing on all these other trainings where we're not seeing mishaps rather than looking at the ones where we are? And you can see the nature of the mishaps. This is within the table. I just try to blow it up for you and the cost of mishaps. I'm getting dry mouth already. No, I'm good. And just to show you for consistency, this is Coast Guard active duty mishap report. So you can see we're having the same thing. We actually have a lot of overboards as well. But you can see the comparison. And again, we use this to training. If we start seeing a trend, we work with 731 in both forces or cutter forces, and we say, we're seeing this happen right now. And as a Tri-P, we start looking at how we do that messaging out to the fleet. Oh, thank you. And then here's our blow up the scale, and you can see our cost is significantly higher. Not unlike auxiliary, even active duty boat components, we're seeing a dip in reporting now too. And again, I think it's part of the operational hazard, but we were supposed to encourage reporting to say that it's non-punitive. You can see the damage. That's what we want to drive down, the injuries and damage, make that less. We're already at 13 for 2023 and 125,000. And this is where consistent messaging. This is what we need. If you want to make it relevant to the folks at deck plate, damage claims, medical issues, like you need to have a mishap report to be able to take advantage of those things. Distributing lessons learned, helping us identify trends, organizational change, right? Mishap prevention. Just culture. I love this slide. I know you've seen it 1,000 times, but errors are innate in our nature. It's going to happen. What we need to do is coach people through those and let them know. If they continue the at-risk behavior, That's when you start documenting a little bit, and then reckless choices, that's more the punitive action. But there's not a person in here, I would bet, that hasn't done at least 2 of those. I know I've probably done all 3 in my career. So safety culture change is huge, and it takes a long time. It's just incrementally, and it has to start. One thing that when talking to some industry folks, Captain DeVonzo, retired cutterman, boatswain mate. I mean, that guy, he's been around. He says he thought we did safety good, and now he's with the company. He says it's amazing how much they embrace safety. It's not just a muscle movement. They really believe in it, and they created what's called a value moment or safety moment. And what leadership does is that at the beginning of every meeting, that leader, the senior person in the room, shares a sea story about what they did, the mistake that they made, that they learned, what they learned from it, and how they move forward. And to show them, hey, it's going to happen. Like, I'm not perfect, and no one's perfect. So I would encourage you to start those programs or wherever you're meeting, or before every mission. Let's talk safety here for a second. What's a recent mishap that anybody knows about? Safety awards. Coast Guard, we now have a safety award for the Coast Guard in a float community, aviation community, boat community. I'd encourage you to create your own safety awards within your district. Maybe do a quarterly one. And then at the end of the year, you have 4 you can submit up to, to your leadership here, and then bring in someone who really did a really good safety, did something for safety, and then have one annual award. The other one is safety town halls. We do these about every month, and if the Coast Guard Auxiliarist wants to do one, let us know. We'll put on a safety, or everybody Coast Guard Auxiliary could call in and listen in. Everybody active duty. We do it on Zoom now. Zoom is amazing. So it's a great way to look at doing safety town halls. Final thoughts, takeaways, and I'm not going to take up the whole 5 minutes, but what's your safety policy? How are you monitoring and enforcing it? And it's linked to command climate. When was the last time you reported a mishap or seen one through or distributed one? That's even more important. If you're distributing mishaps, people are more likely. How you distribute it is even more important. And then how active is your safety committee? With that, okay. Oh.
Thank you, Commander. Thank you. We appreciate you.
Thank you.
Ms. Crecilius, do you have announcements?
I do. Thank you for asking. If you have an OTO or a DIROX that is not here this week, isn't going to be present in the meetings, if you'll just take their table tent and either turn it sideways or lay it down, we'll collect those so we can kind of move people in and fill in some seats. Other than that, we're going to take a quick break, about 15 minutes. So if you want to be back in your seats at 09:45, that would be great.
I now reconvene the Committee of the Whole.
Welcome back, everybody. I am now pleased to introduce Auxiliarist Julie Carey for her Women's Leadership Initiative presentation.
I'm short, but not that short. Oh, okay.
Spell the aesthetical interest.
All right, thank you.
Is that a mishap?
Yeah, where's the form to report that? All right, thank you, Commodore Formato. Thank you, Commodore Crookwood, members of the National Board. I am Julie Carey. I am the chair of the auxiliary chapter of the U.S. Coast Guard Women's Leadership Initiative. I am a member here in 8th West, so welcome to Missouri. And you know, I appreciate this opportunity to talk. First, for those who may not be familiar, about what an affinity group is. An affinity group is an organization that exists outside of the chain of leadership. It's made up of members who are supportive of a certain cause. In this case, it is the promoting and retaining of women in the Coast Guard and in leadership positions. You can see here I've highlighted some key words with that, including promote, represent, advocate, and communicate. The auxiliary chapter was formed approximately 2 years ago. And you know, we kicked off our inaugural presentation when talking about women's uniforms. We had over 200 members in attendance at that presentation, showing that we are reaching an underserved population. For WLI specifically, we do have mission and vision statements. These are formed in conjunction with the Coast Guard Office of Diversity, as well as under the auspices of the Coast Guard Alumni Association, which allows us to operate independently. So the question I get most often is, who is a member of the Women's Leadership Initiative? And that is everyone, right? There's this misconception that you have to be a woman to promote women in leadership. That couldn't be further than the truth. It is not uncommon when we have programs for me to distribute flyers, and the response I get back is, thanks, I'll let my women know. Well, in a lot of cases, all right, we want to make sure that our men are coming here too, because they have women that they are interested in seeing move forward in leadership positions. Or especially in the case of uniforms, they have women that they need to help guide and make sure that they are in compliance with uniform regulations. We are first and foremost a leadership group. So why did we decide to form an auxiliary chapter of the Women's Leadership Initiative? Well, it gives us that access to support from the Coast Guard Alumni Association. That support includes registration assistance, flyers. They have subscriptions to software that I use to create the flyers that many of you have received. Program support award funding, right? We have access to money to help develop and implement programs to help our women in leadership, right? We have not yet taken advantage of that funding. I would like to use that on member-led programs. So if you have a member who has an idea for a way to promote women in their district, in their unit, or even nationally, please send them my way, and I can help them procure resources to do that, whether it's purchasing rights to utilize a certain training program, purchasing books for a book club type activity. I can provide that assistance through the Coast Guard Alumni Association. Mentorship opportunities. We're in the process of trying to develop a network of people who our members can reach out to and get assistance. This has happened several times in the last year where someone has contacted me and said, hey, I'm having problems with my flotilla commander. I'm having problems with my division. Can you help me? And I've helped them make those connections. You know, outside the chain of leadership helps avoid some of that internal conflict as a member works through whatever the issue may be that they're experiencing. I do ask Commodores that you let your leadership know that it is acceptable for them to do this. I have heard of one instance where a member reached out to me, told her flotilla commander that she did so, and then was reprimanded for going outside the chain of leadership. So please let your membership know that that is acceptable. We also get access to Coast Guard leadership on issues impacting our women, both here at the auxiliary level and also nationally on the active duty level in the reserves. We have monthly chapter meetings where everyone gets together and talks about these issues that are impacting our members, both active duty and auxiliary, and we even have a reserve chapter. So communication is a two-way street. We are trying to constantly communicate to the membership on the programs and the services that we offer. We also ask for your help in communicating up to us or over to us, as it actually is, and on what you need. One of the benefits to us being outside the chain of leadership is if you need help collecting information from your members and helping to ensure that it's anonymous, we can do that. If someone on my leadership team is in your district, I can make sure that they don't get assigned to that project. The auxiliary is a smaller world than we sometimes remember. Everyone seems like they knows everyone, right? We can help limit that and limit some of the fallout from people making rather strong statements. All right. There are some issues impacting women that we have identified that I would like to draw to your attention. The first is the belief that the goal of diversity is to be gender blind and to treat everyone the same. That could not be further than the truth. Being blind to our differences is not the goal. That actually hinders the goal of diversity. We want to be recognized for the value and the differences our women bring to the table. We need to dispel the belief that intentionally appointing women or designating spots for women is an example of reverse discrimination. Minorities, underserved communities need to be intentionally invited to the table because we are not historically welcomed to the table. All right, and a lot of people have seen this picture, the difference between equity and equality. You can be equal and provide everyone with equal access, but not everyone needs the same access. Not everyone needs the same assistance to be able to fully participate. Microaggressions, these subtle comments that get made that indicates a prejudice, and sometimes we don't know that we are making these comments. They are so mainstream in our society and so mainstream in our language that we don't know that is happening. Here are some examples that are probably not even microaggressions, right? The boat crew that tells a woman that she cannot join them because, well, you know how guys are when we get together. That's not acceptable, that is not inclusive. Or we don't want to have to go back to shore to use the restroom. That goes against so many core values of the Coast Guard that it's shameful that we have members who say that. Social media. Back in January, this post with jokes was brought to my attention and was shared with the diversity office to determine what the best way of handling things like this. You saw the outcome of that in a memo saying, hey, please remind your members that when they're in uniform, they cannot be making statements like this. I'm not friends with this gentleman on Facebook. I'm able to access these comments without even actively seeking them out or having the say so. Yes, I want to see this content. Thank you. These are images from the same gentleman that I pulled last week. If you read it, there is some rather stunning and shameful language. This member is taking pleasure in making jokes at members' personal trauma. This is not acceptable in today's auxiliary, and I'm asking our Commodores to help us make sure our members know that this is acceptable. Per policy, all this gentleman would have to do to comply is to take down the picture of him in uniform. But I want to ask you, if you were a potential new member who knew this gentleman from a PE class or from a public affairs booth, and you were trying to figure out what sort of organization this is to join, and they came across this, would you want to join our organization? So some activities that we've done since NTRAIN 2022. Here's a list of our presentations that we've given. Bring in a retired rear admiral, our uniforms, parliamentary procedures, managing stress, all stuff that our members have identified that they would like information on. Our upcoming activities, April 13th, Leadership Oxpad. At some date in the future, the director of the training directorate is going to come talk to us. And then some others. How to be an accessory. This is going to be a young active duty gentleman who has approached me about ways he can help women in the Coast Guard. And he wants to talk to our male members about how not to be an ally, but to be an accessory to women in leadership. We are going to be recruiting and expanding. This is going to be an intentional and perhaps unorthodox approach to recruiting for our leadership team. The most qualified candidate will not likely be the one selected. We are looking to provide opportunities. We are looking to provide geographic diversity to our leadership team, as our current team tends to be fairly condensed geographically. So finally, here is some contact information. Here's the email address to the chair of the overarching organization. And here is my contact information. You're also welcome to catch me. I'm in town until Sunday. So please, if you have my phone number, look up an Ox officer, shoot me a text message, and I will make sure to connect with you while we're all here. So thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Carey.
John. It is now my pleasure to introduce Bill Hanlon for his gap analysis.
Thank you. National Commodore Formato, Captain Glendye, Coast Guard, and Auxiliary Senior Leadership, good morning, and thank you for the opportunity to review this subject matter. If I may paraphrase the Cheshire Cat from Alice in Wonderland, if you don't know where you're going, any road will get you there. If you don't know where you're going, any road will get you there. Well, the Gap Analysis Program, or GAP for short, was undertaken 7 years ago to better understand where the auxiliary needs to go to effectively support the Coast Guard. Like with many new initiatives, there's been some growing pains. That's not to say that there haven't been success stories along the way. Quite to the contrary. Just some that come to mind are the chaplain support program, the ever-increasing use of the interpreter corps requests for foreign language personnel, the culinary assistance program at small boat stations and onboard cutters, professional, health and legal and financial education efforts come to mind. See how we move this. The objective, in a nutshell, the GAP is a roadmap. It's a tool designed to help leadership define where we are, and as an organization, what we need to consider when marshaling the auxiliary resources to meet the Coast Guard needs. The goals. First, the GAP seeks to identify the Coast Guard's mission needs by job title and task. Next, the GAP seeks to identify the resources, be it by people, ops, or surface operations, air operations, or the communication assets that we have. And lastly, the data will be shared with the appropriate staff directorates for evaluation of training as may be necessary for the auxiliary members who are seeking to fulfill those requested roles. A little background information. 2016 was the rollout year for the GAP, with subsequent understanding and appreciation of the process by both the gold and silver side, the survey responses improved rather significantly. Now, in the first 2 reporting periods, only sectors were surveyed. That's because that's where the majority of the gold and silver side interactions usually take place. The auxiliary now is in its 4th iteration of the GAP. For 2023, 35 sectors and 24 air station commands were surveyed. Now, in order to produce this NTRAIN report, there was a closeout date of January 20th. Now, while not originally contemplated after starting that survey, a suggestion was offered and the decision was made to extend the scope of that survey to include what we dubbed non-traditional Coast Guard entities. Those 73 additional entities are considered non-traditional because the Coast Guard units generally have had little or no prior experience with the auxiliary. Now let me review some of those non-traditional Phase 2 entities. We identified 17 bases, all of the district offices, civil engineering, the recruiting and training units, as well as cyber intel command units. Those are entities that we generally do not have interaction with, but we are reaching out to them as the Coast Guard needs are changing. So the process, what was the process for collecting the data? First, the Emergency Management Disaster Response GAP team asked the district commodores to appoint a point of contact. That point of contact coordinated with the air stations and sectors to identify the gold side needs. The point of contact then collected the information and forwarded it to the GAP team. The survey had 91 specific survey questions and regarding the mission task. The questions that were asked were, are you currently using the auxiliary mission? What is your level of need and what is the urgency of your need? There were forced multiple choice answers. For question 1, it was either yes or no, are you currently using it? For question 2, what is your level of need? The answers were none, the same amount, or we need more. For question 3, what is the urgency? It was not needed anymore, or we need it for mission efficiency, or it is critical to our operations. Now those responses were assigned a numeric value so that we could provide a scoring of those responses, of those needs. Now, this slide illustrates how the information from the sectors and the air stations were displayed on the worksheet. Now, the top line, it may be a little bit difficult to see, but that top line up here will show the score that was received from the responses. The second line underneath indicates which directorate has primary responsibility for that task. And we will then be reaching out to those directorates and sharing that information with them. Now, some of the early data that was collected thus far, sorted by the highest scores, are represented here. At this moment, there are 12 missions that were requested tasks. But again, these are very, very preliminary figures, with the highest score being, as would be expected, as a radio watch standard. In descending order was the coxswain and crew, followed by culinary assistants, first aid, CPR instructor, admin personnel to assist, TCT or risk management instructors, Coast Guard recruiting specialists, Coast Guard agency reps at the local EOCs, and so on and so on. But these are very preliminary in that these are phase 1 information. That is information received from the sectors and the air stations up through January 20th of this year. So what are the next steps in the GAP process? Phase 2 efforts are now ongoing with the 73 non-traditional Coast Guard entities, those district offices, the bases, civil engineering, cyber command, and intel command, among the other units. Now, after April 15th, the deadline, they're out there collecting that data presently. After that deadline, the GAP team will share that data with the directorates to analyze the potential training issues and share with the Chief Director's office. We will set up Zoom calls to share the information with the district on a district-by-district basis with the Commodores or your designees to let you know where we are with this. And a final detailed report is scheduled for release in August at NACON. And so lastly, I'd like to thank the GAP team, which was headed up by Eric Nielsen, my division chief, and his two staff members, Jeff Barnes and Eddie Puckett, and the district POCs for their efforts in supporting this critical mission. Now, pending any questions, this is the current, albeit very preliminary, state of the GAP analysis for the Coast Guard needs. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hanlon. At this time, I would like to present to you my State of the Auxiliary address. For those of you who watched the Commandant's State of the Coast Guard address, mine too will not be lengthy or verbose. However, many of the things that I wanted to touch on have already been covered by my very astute Deputy National Commodores, so I just learned the disadvantage of speaking last.
Or the advantage.
Or the advantage. I will do my best not to be redundant. So I first want to discuss the rationale that led to the very difficult decision of moving NTRAIN to March. We are very social people. We tend to gather in groups indoors in November and December. We celebrate holidays together. We celebrate each other together. And what that does is it drives infection rates high in January. This year it wasn't COVID, it was influenza. On the day that I made the decision, there was not one available hospital bed in St. Louis County, the entire county. Another thing that is considered was the fact that budgets are not always in place in January. So keeping all of this in mind, with this NTRAIN and those going forward, they'll be in March. And that's going to make the most sense for us. I make so many decisions, as of each of you, driven by one thing, and that's member safety. There's so many things we can't replace. We can replace, we can't replace you. Okay, so here we are, we're in St. Louis. For those of you who follow me on social media, you know that on Wednesdays and Thursdays every week I'm out somewhere playing trivia. And one of my few wins, the final question was, what is the tallest monument, not building, monument in the United States? I'll give you a hint, it's not Mount Rushmore. It's the Gateway Arch, 630 feet. So I got to visit the city that hosts the largest monument in America. That's pretty cool. Right now, the Coast Guard total workforce is at a great shortage. As of yesterday morning, active duty was down 3,800 people that they needed. So that means we have many, many, many more opportunities to support them. As Captain indicated, we have been contacted by Mr. Keith O'Neill of Contracts, and they're requesting assistance closing out contracts. They have completed but not closed out 300,000 contracts. Yeah, the number's correct. And they are requesting help from us in the way of attorneys, paralegals, accountants, and now we're going to open that up to purchasing managers, contract managers. This is most likely going to be a multi-year project. And this is just something new that nobody could fathom years ago that we would ever be doing to support the Coast Guard. We also have seats on the Total Workforce Transformation Task Force. Some of our HR people are represented there, and they will be reaching out to our directorates for input as well. They've already reached out to the T Directorate. If your directorate is contacted, I encourage you to help in any way you possibly can. As you know, there is a large recruiting drive. Each one of us is considered a recruiter. The Coast Guard has set up a call center for recruiting. I'm honored to tell you that the script at that call center was authored by an auxiliarist, and that call center is being manned by auxiliarists. At the same time, if they are speaking to an individual who has an interest in joining active duty Coast Guard, but for some reason there's a disqualifier, they then shift the conversation to joining the auxiliary, and we're hoping that this will bolster our forces. We have also been offered 4 seats in a virtual Coast Guard recruiter training class, and the 4 individuals who will be attending this will then be permitted to work in a recruiting office alongside an active duty recruiter. You have heard mention, as the week go on, you will hear mention again of the amazing things we've done down in the southwest border. We've had 122 auxiliaries supported that mission, both at Eagle Pass, Texas, and El Paso. We've had warehouse personnel, clergy, health service professionals, and interpreters. 29 of those 122 auxiliaries served multiple deployments. Thank you, thank you, thank you. We've also supported Operation Vigilance Entry, which is occurring in the Florida Straits, where D7 auxiliaries have served as culinary assistants, health service professionals, clergy, and interpreters. And I have recently learned that other districts have contributed to this effort as well. 9 of our interpreters have been underway and served on cutters. Again, please allow me this opportunity to thank you. I am most pleased to advise you, to give you a peek behind the curtain, that very soon we will recognize Auxiliary Stephen Roth from District 5 North as the very first auxiliarist to certify as a Master Cutterman. For those of you who are unaware, a Master Cutterman must serve 52 days per calendar year for 10 consecutive years. That is one accomplishment. So I'm looking forward to attending that ceremony, and I very much looking forward to meeting this auxiliarist. I brought up at our NextCom meeting on Monday the idea of simplifying our onboarding process for members that we're seeking with special skill sets, targeted recruiting. And I'll use a chaplain for example. We need to rethink how we're doing this. Does a chaplain actually require a boating safety course? Do we think it does? So we're going to look at each of these special skill sets individually, and a committee was formed, and I was proud to volunteer to serve on this committee. I'm also very pleased to advise you that we have formed NACO's Inclusionary Advisory Board. And this is a board that has been stood up to advise Commodore Kirkwood and myself of all the ways we can help provide and encourage diverse members to aspire to senior leadership roles. I understand that the final sign-offs will occur probably sometime this week for the standard operating procedure for the Administrative Investigative Directorate. I'm pleased about that. And I'm also very pleased to tell you that I have asked our fine folks over in the H Directorate to remove chapters 10 and 11 from the auxiliary manual. And there would be uniforms and auxiliary recognition and awards. they will be a guide. They will be a separate document so that if change is needed, it can be done quickly and updates can be done in a more efficient manner. Currently, as you're aware, the auxiliary manual is a commandant's instruction, so making any type of change is very, very lengthy and a prolonged process. By removing these chapters and creating a separate handbook or guidebook, it will expedite any change that might be needed. I'm also pleased to tell you, I'm sure you've read the AUKOS, that the auxiliary AUXPAD handbook has been authorized, and I want to congratulate the S Directorate on the growth of the AUX Scout program. 555 members, 26 ships, and the very first Sea Scout organized flotilla was chartered earlier this month. So very, very proud of that. And while I speak to all of that, I also want to remind you that our mission sets are changing, will change to meet those needs, but I don't want to forget RBS too. RBS is still job one. And now I'd like to share something with you on a personal note. On my journey to National Commodore, I've been privileged to receive many, many honors. What I'd like to speak to you about now is my most recent. Very recently, I received this card. This card has made me an honorary member of District 1 North, signed by Commander Sullivan. And for those of you who know me, know I'm a baseball fan. So on the back, you will see the New York Yankees logo and the Boston Red Sox logo. So Commander, I don't mean to embarrass you, but this touched me. Thank you. And lastly, I want you each to know how proud I am of every single one of you. We are doing some amazing things. I had quite a bit of time to speak to the Commandant yesterday, and be proud, continue, be dedicated. Thank you.
Thank you, Commodore. I'd now like to introduce the President of the Coast Guard Auxiliary Association, Van Pica.
No one told me I had to follow Gus. Jeez. Well, good morning, Commodores, Captain, fellow shipmates. I did want to make two off-the-record comments, or out-of-my-agenda comments. One was the DNACO Atlantic West mentioned the push-to-talk program. I was part of the original testing group. I think I have the distance award. I was in Tokyo, and it worked like I was across the room. So if there's a way to push that, I think that's a great, great program for us. Oh, thank you. I would like you to, I'll try to go quickly so we can have questions today here in this setting rather than emails and phone calls later. And with that, let me get to work. Okay, so first, I want to acknowledge the 30-plus patriots that make up the AUX-A. Nothing is possible without them, and everything is possible with them. On our system side, we are friendly, adaptable, easy-to-use systems. Commodore Jeff Geddes and Deputy CIO Ron Blaisdell do a spectacular job, and they and their team are put up against any corporate IT team anywhere. Headed up by Stan Feldman, our fulfillment center, relying heavily on those systems, by the way. You know, picks, packages, ships, thousands of packages a year, to you at cost-effective prices. And with the same staffing level, we're up 18% year over year. So great job by that team. The work that our marketing team has done, it creates those emails that you see, what we call the blue and whites, headed up by Lou DeGiusto. Just continues to push out deals, pitching deals to companies. Would you like access to a Fortune 300 company, which is what we are if you just count heads? And what kind of deal can we strike with your company for our members? They're just doing a terrific job in bringing that forward. I'll have a couple more comments in the more developed part of the presentation. On the development side, headed up by Commander Suzanne Heeman, retired, they continue to find ways to make it easy for people and organizations to donate to us so we can recycle those dollars back into the programs that are part of our mandated mission. We have assembled, as many people know, a blue chip Campaign for Zero committee to help us get that message out to corporations and high net worth individuals. Two of our more illustrious members, one is Ted Leonsis, owner of the Washington Capitals, Wizards, Mystics, many other things, and Admiral Thad Allen, retired. So we're really getting that message out to very high levels. And of course, many others help us in finance, legal, processing, admin, all to the public company standards we hold ourselves to. And no mention of it, the help is complete without talking about the board of directors. This is a group of very dedicated individuals constantly providing guidance to the essentially the executive committee that runs AUX-A on a day-to-day basis. And our pole star, our core values, our credo, as it were, is really what drives our actions. We practice complete transparency is probably the best way to put it in dealing with you. We're all God's imperfect creatures, starting with me. A couple of weeks ago, we sent out a blue and white. The prices were wrong. They were too low. We honored those prices until we sent out a correction. That was our error, not the member's error. And in interacting with our vendors, with third parties, we're obviously operating at levels of integrity and openness and transparency that shines a very bright light on Coast Guard forces globally. So let's talk about the surplus. Remember last year we talked about a direct grant to units. Well, it needed to be reworked. We got a lot more requests for retention-related programs than for recruitment-related programs. So, and then we had to have a big discussion, well, what does that really mean? What is, looking at the requests, is retention just keeping people happy? Well, if you need a tent or a canopy for a maritime fair, things of that nature, sounds good. We need a new boat? Maybe not so good, because it's just too big of a lift when you think about it as a national organization. So we redesigned the system. We moved the decision-making processing down into AUX-A from NEXCOM because of the nature was much more granular, not so strategic. We created basically a grant sharing formula. We'll put up 80 cents on a dollar. The unit puts up 20 cents on a dollar. We'll talk more about that in a second. And we also created a financial aid package. Just like if anybody sent a kid to college, you know what financial aid packages are. Well, there are units out there with real needs but don't have resources, so we should have a financial aid package. So 80-20, what does that really look like? Well, how about a $1,000 10 by 10 fully kitted canopy emblem and our name on it for $200? That sounds so bad, right? That sounds pretty attractive. So direct grants, we're continuing the process of improving that process, again under Commander Heeman. We did, by the way, just last week, we meet weekly, this committee, and we set aside an allocation for AUX Scouts, or what's more lovingly the Sea Scouts. So we're trying to find every way possible to help the recruitment side, because the retention side is actually pretty easy to handle. And we'll continue the processes that we have in hand. On the financial side, Dave Barber runs that for us as our CFO, as you know. We ruggedized the system last year, and now the budget system is fully operational, and those Zoom calls that you went through to set up your budgets, now you're going to be going through the Zoom calls to see how you're doing against those budgets. I mentioned earlier Lou DeGiusto and his marketing team, those blue and whites. The click-through rate, you can get a lot of data on basically email advertising. And we are operating at multiples of national levels, both on the open of just opening it and reading it. You see that 25% on the national level. That means 3 out of every 4 emails regarding some marketing opportunity just get deleted. They don't even open it. They see the headline, gone. Okay. Then on what's the click-through rate is, well, I've read it and now I want it. Well, again, we're operating at multiples of the national level. So we think we're putting things out that people want, and that's always our goal. We made a major expansion of the marketing team, and we've developed a formal associate member programs for the public. Like, how many people have gone out and done a vessel exam, and the boat owner says, gee, you guys are just so great, you're doing this for nothing. How can I give something back? Well, the associate member program is that way. A $100 donation, they get a certificate, of course, we have a certificate. They also get the AUX-A challenge coin. Madam Commodore, would you hold yours up? I think it was either Lou DeGiusto or Jim Losi that designed this very, very handsome coin. And they get a windshield sticker for their boat, which identifies them as a supporter of the auxiliary. So we hope to raise $10,000 this year. You know, the Amazon Smile program went away. Well, this will be bigger than Amazon Smile. And every dollar that comes in, you know, I think of a dollar this way. It's 1/24th of a new member. Okay? Because when you collect dues, 24 cents of every dollar gets to the national level, so I can give it back to you. Right? So every dollar I raise is 1/24th of a new, every dollar saved is 1/24th of a new member. No fingerprinting necessary. Right? It's a very efficient dollar. We're going to launch this associate member program through our great friends at Waterway Guide, where they will promote this to their 30,000 members. Last year we talked about that our major focus at the Fulfillment Center will be on Unit Pride gear. I'm sure I've actually seen some of these worn last night at the bar. We're going to continue to focus on Unit Pride wear because that's what people want. We literally sell hundreds and hundreds of these T-shirts, blouses, and sweaters. And we will put things, matter of fact, if this hasn't gone out already, I think this one has, put package deals together with basically things that are slow moving, but at the right price, everything picks up velocity. And Mother's Day is in the offing, so be prepared to see, instead of a man's tie, a lady's scarf. Okay, so in conclusion, before I get to the questions, a look ahead. Look, we are running up the score. Okay, Unit Pride works, the affiliate membership will work, but we're running at a deficit. That's Fed speak for losing money. Okay, so it's not sustainable, and we're looking at various solutions. Obviously, well, the direct grant to units recruitment part of the formula is a big part of that, because not only is it more dues, that recycled dollar I sent back to you, but there's also people to buy product. So it's a double win every time you add a person. Now, there's also, maybe we should be outsourcing the fulfillment center. So we're talking to industry, Coast Guard Exchange, that has pluses and minuses. Now, the other is we just raise prices. Well, no one likes to raise prices, but understand this. If I raise prices to 60% of Vanguard's prices, we make $100,000. So how would you like to sell that pitch as a recruitment? Vanguard at a 40% discount. That could work. We'll see. So, in conclusion, you know, we're not done yet by far. I say that every year, and every year we seem to be able to move the ball forward. Obviously, the tremendous support from the Commodores, National Commodore, Vice National Commodore, and the entire NEXCOM are critical, and never with a question mark. They're always right behind us. And with that, I'd like to open it up for any questions you may have, suggestions, complaints. Stop? Am I out of time? Is that what the stop sign means?
Yes.
Okay. One question? Sorry. Okay. Find me by the bar. Thanks for your attention.
There you go. That's a good one.
Thank you, Commodore Pica. We will now address the national recommendations that have been submitted. Vice National Commodore Mary Kirkwood, will you please present the recommendations?
All right, thank you. Each member of the National Board received a copy of the recommendations on March 1st. I will present an overview of each of the recommendations, and they will also be discussed tomorrow at the National Area Planning meetings. I will now present the recommendations. Recommendation 1 was submitted by Commodore Gus Formato in September of 2022 while in the role of VNACO. The subject was the Aguilette Wear for the Deputy National Commodores and NACO Executive Assistant. The vote required is adoption, and approval of this recommendation would modify the Aux-Man to authorize wear of the appropriate Aguilette for Deputy A NACO and NACO Executive Assistant to be consistent with the Commandant Instruction M16790.1 G10-32 F2. And for discussion, for consistency, the position identification for A NACO Deputy and NACO Executive Assistant are appropriate. They would distinguish the A NACO Deputy Office from the Director Office to bring credit to the position and establish the appropriate chain of leadership and management as an identifier. Additionally, this is consistent with the current direction for District Chief of Staff, whereas they are to be distinguished from the District Captain already established for equivalent elected leadership. Further, the wearing of the Aguilette also clearly identifies the A NACO Deputy as the designator in the absence of the A NACO. The change will also improve morale for selected individual and provide incentive for the aspiring and to achieve greater upward mobility in national staff appointment. Is there further discussion? All right, hearing none. I know there will be further discussion tomorrow. Hearing none, I will move to the next one. Recommendation number 2, the subject is reducing national dues for youth members. This was submitted by Commodore Peter Jensen, dated November 22. Required of adoption. Recommendation would reduce national dues by 50% for those who are under 18 years of age. And the discussion points include reducing national dues by 50%, which would make it $12 for those members who are 14 through 17 years old at the time the dues invoices are generated. The fiscal impact to our organization is minimal, as there are currently only 51 members who meet the criteria. The recommendation would serve to bolster our image and our accessibility to get younger members into the auxiliary, which is a good growth strategy. Most youth members are part of the auxiliary Sea Scout program and as such are paying both Sea Scout dues and auxiliary dues. Reducing dues is likely to provide incentive for more auxiliary Sea Scout program participants to become members. It's worth noting that our counterparts in the U.S. Air Force Auxiliary, the Civil Air Patrol, have set their dues for cadet members at half of what their senior or adult members are assessed. Is there further discussion points? All right, hearing none, we'll move on. Recommendation number 3, the subject is to amend Chapter 11, Section A.18 regarding anniversary streamers. This was submitted from Terry Barth, Director of W through A NACO, Rich Mahuchik, in October of 2022. Vote required is adoption. This recommendation seeks to amend Chapter 11, Anniversary Streamers, which describes the colors for streamers and their corresponding lettering for 50th, 60th, 70th, and 75th charter date anniversaries. This recommendation would amend the AUX manual to include the provision for streamers of the 80th, 90th, and 100th anniversary charter dates, and we're getting there soon. The 80th would be blue with white lettering, the 90th would be purple with white lettering, and the 100 would be platinum with gold lettering. After 100 years, streamers can be requested every 25 years, such as 125 years, 150 years, and the color and lettering of those streamers would be determined at a later date by the National Commodore. A much later date. Discussion. Yeah, I won't be here either. Discussion. The Coast Guard Auxiliary celebrated its 80th anniversary in 2019. An 80th anniversary streamer was presented. There are several flotillas and divisions that will be celebrating 80th anniversaries, but the auxiliary manual only provides for request receipt of a streamer up to the 75th year. The Coast Guard Auxiliary Association currently has 19 80th anniversary streamers in stock. The auxiliary manual would need to be amended to inform flotilla division and districts that anniversary streamers are available for request for 80 years and beyond, following the suggestions above. The awards guide would also need updating if this recommendation is approved. Is there any further discussion? I'm hoping my voice holds out. All right, hearing none. Recommendation number 4. The subject is establishing a pathway for honorably discharged and/or retired members to join the Coast Guard Auxiliary. This came from Commodore Rick McConnell, the 8th Coastal Region, via DNACO Land Areas West. This recommendation proposes to credit retired and/or honorably discharged Coast Guard personnel enrolling in the Coast Guard Auxiliary within 3 years of discharge or retirement with the training and qualifications attained and current during their Coast Guard service. Discussion point. There exists a relatively untapped pool of retired and honorably discharged U.S. Coast Guard personnel with qualifications and talents that would be of immense value to the U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary. Many hold qualifications that would take an average new auxiliarist years to attain. Coast Guard training requirements are met, and many hold ICS qualifications experience and have training that would be beneficial to us. They have shipboard experience and are qualified as watch standers in many cases in operations centers. Having served in the Coast Guard, these honorably discharged and retirees are in an ideal position to assist in the recruiting of regular Coast Guard and auxiliary members by extolling the benefits and personal satisfaction of Coast Guard service. It is recommended that all Coast Guard honorably discharged and retirees enrolling in the Coast Guard within 3 years of honorable discharge and/or retirement be credited with qualifications and certifications that were attained while on active duty and were current at the time of discharge and/or retirement. Is there any further discussion? Okay. Recommendation number 5 would amend the auxiliary manual referencing the Auxiliary Diversity Award. This was submitted from Commodore Tracy Schultz, NACO Diversity, in November of 22. Required for adoption, this recommendation would amend the auxiliary manual to make the Auxiliary Diversity Award an annual award and allow for NACO discretion in recognition of this award. The current wording in the AUX manual states that this award is not an annual award, but rather shall be implemented in accordance with the following provisions at the discretion of NACO. The Auxiliary Diversity Award is an important award as we strive to make our organization, this is discussion, more diverse and inclusive. The NACO 3-Star Award is an annual award. This individual diversity award needs to be given each year there are eligible and deserving members. Presenting the award annually would align us with similar individual diversity awards presented annually by the U.S. Coast Guard to its members. This allows for the NACO to have flexibility in recognizing recipients. Financial impact is unknown. However, there will likely be financial savings by not always having to pay travel, lodging, and per diem expenses for the awardee and spouse to attend NTRAIN. Allows NACO flexibility in recognizing recipients based on geographic, economic, social, and other related factors. For example, sometimes it would be best for NACO or a representative to attend a local NTRAIN to recognize the award recipient. There would be several opportunities to recognize members in different settings to enhance the award's significance. Is there any further discussion on this one? All right, hearing none. Recommendation number 6. The subject is paddlecraft operators awarded 1 point for each patrol hour toward earning their RBS insignia. This is from the DNACOs of PAC area and Atlantic West. It's required for adoption, the vote. This recommendation provides that members earning the certification as paddlecraft operator be awarded 1 point for each patrol toward earning the RBS insignia. Discussion points. Since the establishment of the paddlecraft operator certification in August of 2018, members of the auxiliary have purchased and equipped paddlecraft and completed the paddlecraft operator PQS to earn certification as a paddlecraft operator. Unlike coxswains or PWC operators in the surface program and pilots in the aviation program, paddlecraft operators are not awarded any insignia to designate them as a paddlecraft operator. Currently, participants in the recreational boating safety program can earn the privilege of wearing the RBS insignia by earning points for performing RBS activities as outlined in Chapter 10 of the OXMAN. A total of 240 points, 120 points each year for 2 consecutive years must be earned. It is recommended that a member attaining certification as a paddlecraft operator be awarded 1 point per patrol hour toward the 120 points per year earned over the 2-year period needed for the RBS insignia. There is provision should the operator go into rework or re-year status for any reason as a paddlecraft operator, the operator forfeits the points earned for patrols and will need to accumulate the 240 points by participating in the activities outlined in the section of OXMAN cited above. Is there any further discussion? All right. This concludes the recommendations. Thank you.
Is there any other business to be brought before the board? Okay, hearing none. Mrs. Chrysalis, do you have any announcements for us?
Why, yes, sir, I do. Thank you for asking. First, I've got a couple of things. There were some sunglasses that were left in the DNACO meeting yesterday, so if you have you're missing a pair of sunglasses, we have those here. Next one, we received a question on our YouTube. If you don't remember, we're going live right now, and so somebody had typed in a question, and this is for you, Commodore. What strategy do we have to motivate younger professionals to dignify volunteering for the auxiliary?
Wow, that's a great question. We don't normally address questions at Committee of the Whole, but considering this outstanding question, if you're okay with it, I think I'd like to address it. As we discussed earlier, you've heard it from some of the Deputy National Commodores. You've heard it from myself as well as the Commandant yesterday. We are continually branching out to non-traditional missions. And in doing so, we are targeting recruiting. And a lot of the targeting recruiting that we're doing, perhaps in cyber, IT, engineering, things like that, we're reaching out to younger professionals. Now, we also realize that a lot of these people may be starting families or have established families, and it may be difficult for them to attend flotilla meetings and other types of meetings. And we also realize that when we're looking for a skill set, people might be from all over the United States and the protectorates. We have people here from Guam. So with that in mind, we're looking to develop virtual flotillas. Right now, we're looking to start that with cyber. We're looking to expand it to medical health services, to culinary, and to clergy. So as we address each of these new needs and each of these new skill sets, we're also going to sit down and look at the best ways to support them and to make it more desirable and easier for people to serve. I hope I answered your question. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. One more announcement. There will be some awards given at the National Board meeting on Friday afternoon. That's going to start around 16:20, the awards section of that. Recipients attending NTRAIN will be emailed today or tomorrow announcing that you'll be receiving an award. If the recipient is not present, the DCO will be asked to accept the award on their behalf. So be looking for that email, please. And then last but not least, if I can have the entire head table to come down to the front, please, because I said so. I said please.
I'm terrified.
We have a special award presentation. Commodore Molesky will not be here Friday, so we're going to present this award to him right now. Everyone can still remain seated for this presentation. Citation to accompany the award of the Auxiliary Achievement Medal to Commodore Alexander J. Molesky, United States Coast Guard Auxiliary. Commodore Molesky is cited for superior performance of duty for his swift actions at the 2022 NTRAIN. While attending an off-duty social dinner event, Commodore Molesky's superb situational awareness led him to diagnose a bad situation and take critical action that saved a fellow auxiliarist's life. Shortly after starting the meal, a fellow Commodore began showing the early signs of choking. Commodore Molesky quickly assessed the situation and promptly jumped to the aid of the victim. Within seconds, he expertly began performing the Heimlich maneuver. Commodore Molesky's focused and tenacious action quickly dislodged the choking hazard from the victim's airway, saving the life of a fellow Coast Guard auxiliarist. Commodore Molesky's diligence, perseverance, and a devotion to duty are most heartily commended and are in keeping with the highest traditions of the United States Coast Guard and the United States Coast Guard Auxiliary. Signed, Troy P. Glendy, Captain, U.S. Coast Guard, Chief, Office of Auxiliary and Boating Safety.
Gary was almost NATO. I didn't want to do it for another 2 years. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Look over here. Give me a big one.
Thank you. Sorry. Thank you, guys. All right, before we convene, make sure the copy of the recommendations that you received today, bring those back on Friday for the board meeting as well, please. And I think that is it. We are all set. Gus, good to go, sir?
We're good to adjourn.
All right. Thank you, sir.
you.